Borderlands 4 has been an awesome game to play when it works. Unfortunately, trying to play on the Steam Deck has been a very hard experience and not one I would recommend. It not only feels awful, but it also constantly stutters and drops when loading things in. I'm not surprised by it, but still wish it was better. However, there are more powerful handhelds out there, so I wanted to try out some of these to see if the game was going to be playable on the go at all. So in today's video, we're going to be checking out how Borderlands 4 is running on the ROG Ally, the ROG Ally X, and the AYANEO 3. Specifically, I'm going to focus more on the AYANEO 3 because it's going to give us an idea of what Borderlands 4 will be like with the upcoming handhelds, including the ROG Xbox Ally X and others that are going to have the Z2 Extreme APU. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. Before I begin the video, please consider subscribing to our Patreon to support us. If you subscribe to the $3 or $5 tier, you get full access to our website ad-free, access to exclusive podcasts, access to exclusive videos, the ability to help shape what we're going to be doing next video-wise, and much more. There is more planned, so if you want to support us, please go ahead and check it out, and thank you. So, as I said before, I want to focus more on the AYANEO 3, which is going to give us an idea of how the game is going to be playable on the ROG Xbox Ally X and Legion Go 2, and really any handheld that's going to have the Z2 Extreme APU. This is going to be the best case to see how Borderlands 4 is going to be on the upcoming handhelds, even though there's no handheld with a Z2 Extreme that's released right now. The AYANEO 3 sports an AMD Ryzen AI9 HX370 APU, which is similar to the Z2 Extreme. Their GPU module is exactly the same, but the HX370 has 4 extra CPU cores and slightly more L2 and L3 cache. The AYANEO 3 model I have also has 32GB of RAM instead of 24GB, which is what the Xbox Ally X will have. While there are some differences, this should give us a general gist of how it will run on the Xbox Ally X. So, even though we're going to be showing the AYANEO 3, expect slightly worse performance on the Xbox Ally X compared to this. After playing the game, I was shocked by how well it runs on the AYANEO 3. I tested Borderlands 4 with a friend for our Steam Deck focused article, and he mentioned how iffy the performance was on a regular ROG Ally. So I went in thinking I would have to play at 720p and might be able to push medium visuals at 30 frames per second. However, I was wrong. I started playing the game on low settings with XeSS upscaling at balance and started off at 1080p to see if it was possible. And surprisingly enough, it is. In the less open areas, it is able to stick above 30 frames per second, with only one instance I saw drop to 29. It is a bit harder hitting in the more open areas and much more enemies, but it doesn't drop that far below 30, so for 1080p, that's pretty amazing. From there, I wanted to check out the visual and performance differences, coming from 1080p down to 720p. So, without changing any settings and standing in one spot, I went from 38 frames per second to 58 frames per second. During fights, I was seeing ranges from around 43 to 51, with some downward spikes to 41. It didn't get below 40 frames per second during the fights I was part of. However, moving to medium was a little bit too much. Not only did the frame rate fall below 40 more often, but I also experienced my first crash. With the Xbox Ally X being less powerful overall, I would say keeping to low quality with XeSS upscaling on balanced at 720p will definitely be playable at 30 frames per second, maybe 40. As for 1080p at the same quality, my guess is going to be 30 frames per second with some slight dips below. As for 1080p at the same quality, I would maybe skip this one because on the Xbox Ally X, it could go below 30 much more often. I was honestly blown away by how well it was performing in general though. Mixed with the gorgeous OLED screen of the AYANEO 3, I was having a field day, and this is going to be the way I play Borderlands 4 primarily. I have a full-fledged desktop PC to play on, but honestly, I love being able to take it with me, and it just performs so much better than I expected. So while I was testing the AYANEO 3, I got curious and decided to go ahead and test it out on the ROG Ally and ROG Ally X. Both have Z1 Extreme APUs with different RAM sizes, with the ROG Ally having 16GB and the ROG Ally X having 24. And I would say they represent the first generation of devices that use the Z1 Extreme, 7840U, and 8840U APUs. Starting with the ROG Ally, performance was brutal. 1080p at low settings with TSR on high was around 15 to 20 frames per second when standing still, dropping dramatically when in combat. It was about what I experienced on the Steam Deck at the lowest possible quality. So I decided to change over to 720p resolution, and while it did hit 30 frames per second and above, it introduced a lot of stuttering and I would consider it unplayable. I decided to then drop down TSR upscaling to Ultra Performance, which is the best performing upscaler, and it didn't fix much. It was marginally better, but ultimately not nearly enough because I still had tons of stuttering in fights coupled with terrible visuals from the watered down TSR upscaling. It seemed as though it was only getting worse and worse from my experience, so I can't really recommend playing this on the ROG Ally. Then I went to the ROG Ally X, and I was starting to get a little bit worried. But I was hoping that the extra RAM, which can be allocated to VRAM, might help performance a bit. And it does. The game started off at 1080p with low settings and TSR upscaling on high, and we were back to sub 30 frames per second the entire time, but it's still stuck above 20. However, going down to 720p, I started to see some hope. Almost all fights I was in stuck above 30 frames per second, with some moments hitting 40. This was on TSR high, which did show some washed out environments from time to time, but it wasn't that bad at all. However, I do have reason to suspect that it gets worse later on. We posted on Twitter about avoiding Borderlands 4 on the Steam Deck, and the Xbox era team actually commented mentioning that the ROG Ally X isn't great with it. Since they reviewed the game, I would say it's safe to assume they tested further areas that I haven't reached, like endgame, and it gets way more hectic there. With that in mind, it's very possible that the game will experience bigger drops later on, and need more compromises. Gliding also started to show more slowdowns getting closer to 30, so I ultimately decided to test on TSR balanced and performance. TSR balance and performance were incrementally better than quality, but I still experienced drops here and there when having to fight enemies close up or grenades and projectiles exploding in my face. Ultimately, I would say the ROG Ally X is just playable, but I am cautious. Seems to run okay so far, but I am still early on in the game and it could get a lot worse. It may be possible to play through at 30 frames per second, but would likely need to bring TSR upscaling down to performance or ultra performance, which really don't look good. The ROG Ally wasn't playable for me, which makes me feel the Ally X's extra RAM is doing some heavy lifting here. Still, the endgame is going to be one to watch in this case. The AYANEO 3 actually shocked me with how well Borderlands 4 performed on the device. Being able to hit 30 frames per second and above in 1080p while going over 40 frames per second in 720p, it's amazing. I have doubts that I could go above and beyond with those compromises, but it's still great to see. It gives me hope for the ROG Xbox Ally X and other handhelds like the Legion Go 2 that are going to have a Z2 Extreme APU, but it's going to be tough to know for sure until it comes out. As for the Ally and Ally X, I remain more skeptical. The Ally was just poor experience for me, and the Ally X, while in a playable state, makes me worried for the later parts of the game. I would be skeptical of Ally X until we see some endgame gameplay. But in the end, I would consider it cautiously playable. The best way to play natively on the go is going to be using a Z2 Extreme, HX370, or the upcoming AI Max Plus 395 APUs. Or, if you're fine with cloud streaming, you can use GeForce Now. Honestly, it's still pretty amazing to see it play in the palm of my hands, and I love playing it on that AYANEO 3. If you want to try it out for yourself, Borderlands 4 can be purchased on Steam for $69.99 right now. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. And a huge thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. See you next time.